LeBron James says there's nothing more important than optimal REM sleep. It's the best way to be physically and emotionally back to 100% as possible. And so he's not just talking about sleep. He's talking about REM sleep when dreaming is happening. And I've heard him say also that you have great dreams. I'm so curious. I want to know what LeBron James is dreaming about. Maybe he has people that have taught him how to lucid dream, and that's why he's so good. I don't know.
Yeah, that's so funny. I'm sure that athletes who play a lot of sports definitely dream about it and dream about being on the field. I mean, it only makes sense. So, LeBron James, if you hear this, please come on the podcast and tell us about your dreams. In all seriousness, this episode, I love this topic. This is about how you can actually use lucid dreaming to practice sports and real life skills. And your brain actually registers the neural pathways and remembers the muscle memory of doing the skill or the sport, and you can actually improve your performance. And yes, there is scientific research on this. I included some studies below in the description if anybody is interested in the literature. But other than that, let's get to it and welcome my guest, Eric.
Hey, Mina. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Long time no see. Really well. Yeah. A lot of my dream life is related to athletics too. And that's kind of the population that I'm looking to teach. I'm also expecting a baby in the beginning of next year. So that'll be interesting how that impacts my sleep at the beginning in January.
Wow, congrats on the new baby and welcome to the Dream World podcast.
Thank you.
So Eric, who are you? How did you get into dream work? Tell me about it.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Eric Spirko. I am a longtime dreamer. Dreams have always been a really exciting part of my life. I've always had a rich dream life. I remember as early as being a early teenager, and my parents gave me a dream dictionary one year for Christmas. And in high school, me and some of my friends would get together in first period and talk about our dreams from the night before. And that was always really enjoyable. And I think built a lot of empathy and understanding that there's this bizarre experience that we all have on a nightly basis. And in college, I had a dream where I knew I was dreaming while I was dreaming. And I didn't know you could even do that. I was I had to look it up. This was years back. And I was what was that experience? And I looked it up and learned that it was this thing called lucid dreaming, read a book by Stephen LaBerge, and learned to be able to work with the environment and induce them a little bit more reliably. And from there, it's just been a constant exploration. I've gone, I think my early 20s, I kind of got away from it a little bit. But and in that period, it was, just kind of fun. It was a fun environment to work with. And then as I progressed, as I got a little bit more mature, I saw that it was just this profound opportunity to work with myself and exploration of who am I and some of the deepest things that we can really contemplate. And so that's been how I got to where I am. And as I've grown in my experience and understanding, I've been doing some trainings on teaching and working with some really great teachers and looking to share this with others more regularly, because I just see such incredible healing opportunities in it. And really just believe that this is an amazing modality that is accessible to so many different people.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're on similar journeys. I love it. Do you remember the feeling of your first ever lucid dream? What was your aha moment like?
I don't remember the content of my first lucid dream. I remember the impact that it had, that I woke up, I was what was that? And I remember some early lucid dreams and just how vivid and real they were. There was one early on that I remember I was riding a motorcycle down this highway and just lifted off the motorcycle and soared into the air. And it was just this beautiful tropical scenery with these palm trees that were also kind of flamingos, and this pink orange sky. And I was I woke up, I was man, that is so cool. How did I even create that?
What do you mostly use lucid dreaming for? I know you mentioned that you kind of teach people how to use it for athletics. Is that what you use it for as well?
Occasionally. So a lot of my dream content is, because I spent so much time playing sports in really formative years of my life. A lot of my dreams tend to be about sports where I'm playing. Sometimes it's sports that I played regularly. Sometimes it's random sports that I barely even played. Sometimes they are good experiences where I'm performing well. Sometimes they're really anxiety and frustrating. And I wake up and especially I play a lot of golf now. And some of the golf dreams are I'm trying to play golf in my apartment and there's no room to do anything. And so for me, my own personal dream life, that tends to be a lot of the content of my dreams. I've used it to become lucid. And then if I'm in an environment where I'm playing a sport and I become lucid, I'm right there. and I can practice and I can do something with the dream environment that already exists. And so in those scenarios, I try to kind of just figure out what is most appropriate in a particular dream scenario. And so, yeah, if I'm on a soccer field and I become lucid, then I'm like, yeah, I'm going to kick a soccer ball and I'm going to test out some things. If I become lucid in some place that's not a sports environment, then I will use the dream to do other things. I like to explore emptiness, and I like to, like I mentioned this to you before, but I like to just kind of drop into the earth and rest in this like formless space. And I find it to be very beneficial to my meditation practice. And so that is a nice area of exploration for me. Shadow work is also something that I've done a lot. Like I mentioned, not all of our dreams are pleasant ones. I dealt with nightmares growing up, and lucid dreaming has been amazing in working with those nightmares. And some of the lucid dreams as well, I've been being chased by a monster, and like the feeling of like peace and love and compassion that you can feel when you like confront this monster with love, and like it's just indescribable, really, what you can feel and what you can experience if you face those fears and if you embrace it instead of running away, instead of waking yourself up. I just believe, I mean, frankly, those have been some of the most transformative experiences I've had in a lucid dream. And that's like so beautiful that people who suffer from nightmares and suffer from this sort of experience can learn to work with it. It can really change people's lives.
Yeah, it's incredible how much science there is behind using lucid dreaming as a treatment for nightmares and PTSD.
Yeah, one of the teachers that I work with and was doing some teacher training with, Charlie Morley, he's got a bunch of studies that are coming out with, he works a lot with veterans who have PTSD. And like, it's incredible the results that are coming. And so it's a really interesting time. It feels like a good time to be really investing in this space because, you know, like you said, the science is coming out that there's so much potential in so many different directions you can take it.
Yeah, now's the time to start teaching people and spreading the awareness. I want to hear a little bit about what you were saying with dropping into the earth and taking on this formless space. How do you do that? Can you walk me through the process of that dream?
Yeah. So it's a technique that I learned from a book called Dream Yoga by Andrew Holacek, to just dive into the earth. So basically like you're diving into a pool, basically. You know, it's similar to like if you're trying to walk through a wall. We have so many habits of like this wall is solid or this earth is solid, but in a dream, it's just a dream wall. It's just the dream earth. And so I think the first couple of times that I tried, I just hit my face on the ground because there's just so much, you know, we're just so accustomed to seeing the earth this way. And then as I practiced, I could dive into the earth, and you kind of start to have some sense of like ego dissolution. And then the first time that happened, I panicked, freaked out and woke up, and I woke up and I was just like, all right, well, that was something. And little by little began to learn to just accept that this is the experience, and to just kind of, I could extend it a little bit longer and a little bit longer and a little bit longer each time. And sometimes there's some visuals and some black snow, sort of kind of like a fuzzy TV, but it's also like an energetic space. It's not like an empty form. It's not like an empty space. You have this feeling of energy that just like it's almost like you're charging yourself. It's pretty interesting.
That's really cool. That's awesome. I'm definitely going to try that out. And I understand that it takes like a lot of times trying a dream task sometimes before you fully understand what's going on. I'm just curious too, how much of like what you read in the Dream Yoga book influenced like your expectations of like what was going to happen?
Yeah, that's a great question, because obviously like expectations are very important. You know, if you expect something to happen, it's likely to happen in the dream, with some caveats that obviously you have your dreaming mind that's co-creating this environment with you. I think what that book did for me was really make a connection between lucid dreaming and mindfulness. And I think made it very accessible to understand how lucid dreaming can be just an extension of your daily mindfulness into the nighttime. Andrew Holacek says that a lucid dream is a mindful dream. And that made a lot of sense to me. I thought the way that he writes is just really accessible, very clear. But that was another thing for me when I was learning about the deeper aspects of lucid dreaming. It was like, these practices have been around for like over 1,000 years, 1,500 years in a lot of different cultures. In Tibetan Buddhism and indigenous cultures, they have dream work. So that was like an eye-opening moment for me that was like, oh, wow, there's actually like people who have explored the space and come up with a lot of these practices and some of these techniques that you can use to work with it for self-exploration and development. And I'm sure that it must have influenced my expectations of what to find. But the dream space continues to surprise me. I actually have like, I think my subconscious dreaming mind likes to kind of fuck around with me a little bit. Like when I ask questions to the dream space, I often don't get an answer that I feel like I want or feel like I am satisfied with the answer. So as an example, I have a group that these people that were studying with Charlie over the summer, we were doing this shared dream task of meeting our dream ambassador. And literally just last night, I became lucid and I found this, I was around a bunch of people, the dream characters in the dream. And I was like, hey, who's my dream ambassador? I interviewed my dream ambassador, and people just looked at me like I was stupid. Like, what are you talking about? And somebody was nice enough to be like, I'm not your dream ambassador, but I'll sit down and answer your questions if you want. And so I think my dreaming mind is like a little bit sarcastic and a little bit like, it doesn't want to give me anything easy. And so that's always been interesting for me, is to kind of have to deal with this kind of like character and find a way to work with it productively.
Yeah, I love that about dreams, honestly, because you never know what you're going to get. Even with expectations, sometimes it goes a totally different direction. And the questions, I love asking my dream characters questions because they always tell me something so interesting. And like, usually it's not what I wanted to hear. And that's always funny to sit with. And, I'm just like, okay, well, that's what I got.
Yeah. And the more you do that, the more you're like, wow, there's just like this, there's this dreaming power that exists that like is just so much more profound than our own like waking conscious mind.
Yeah, our dreaming self has an actual impact on our waking self. Like you were talking about practicing skills and sports in your dreams and it actually having an impact on your performance and you improve at that skill. That's incredible. How does that even work? What's the science behind that?
Yeah. So there's been several studies that have come out that basically has people becoming lucid in a dream and performing a particular task that require like some sort of skill, whether it's tossing quarters into a cup or like tapping your fingers in a particular order. And basically what they found was that the population who were able to induce a lucid dream and practice this task performed the best the next day or the next time that they measured the test. So it makes sense because in sports for a long time, it's been widely accepted that visualization is a really powerful mental practice. And it's essentially the same thing as visualization, but you have this like hyper real environment that you're working with. And basically the power of a visualization is dependent upon your ability to visualize. How real can you make the environment in your mind? And in a dreaming mind, it's super real. And so I think it has that great potential because of just how real it seems. And so these studies have come out and, there are some challenges with this. Obviously, it's not super easy always to induce a lucid dream. And like I said, like if you're not in an environment where you're around sports, it can be sometimes hard to like produce that environment that it will have the team or, whatever it is that you need to produce. You have this like unpredictable dream in mind that you're working with. And so it might be a little challenging to get yourself to a place where you need to practice sport. And so that's, those are a couple of the drawbacks, but in the end, like people who are committing a lot of their time to playing sports, like myself, I'm 38 years old now and I still dream about sports. And so anytime that you're having a dream about sports, you have this opportunity to become lucid and then you're right there able to practice in that environment.
It makes sense, because it's like, not only are you visualizing it, you're feeling it. Your muscles are like doing it, like everything is so real. Like you feel the pressure of the ball or whatever, like it feels so realistic.
And even if you don't start off in an ideal environment, it can take some practice, but you can shift to create the setup of whatever you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it really well. It's not just visualization that's the practice. It's actually feelingization, because if you're sitting there, not, away from the dream environment, but if I'm practicing doing a dive, I'm hearing the crowd, I'm smelling the pool, I'm feeling my feet. So there's all these different, senses that you're bringing into the visualization. And so in the dream, obviously those are already there for you, making it more real.
Yeah, true. And the other thing too is like, I know there was a study with like gymnasts and maybe like a ski team or something, and they're able to practice like these crazy jumps and moves that maybe they're scared to practice or something, but there's no like physical waking life consequences of like breaking your arm or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's huge because you think of like an Olympic snowboarder on like the half pipe. You can do some crazy stunts in that environment, and you're right. Like no risk of injury, and it's like a test environment where you can do things that you might not want to attempt. In the waking environment, there's a lot of potential for that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too because sometimes like in my dreams I'll just do like some acrobatic parkour just for fun, and it's things that I know I'll never be able to do. Like I'll be like holding myself up with like a pinky and stuff. And it's just funny. And people always tell me like, "Oh, so does that mean you can do that in waking life?" And I'm like, "Not necessarily, but I definitely have more confidence."
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Of course, there's a limit to it because in waking life, we're constrained by the laws of physics and everything. But I do think there's actually one of the pioneers of lucid dreaming, Paul Tholey. He was, exploring the lucid dreaming space in like the 70s and 80s and was a good athlete himself, I understand. And there's a story that he taught himself how to ride a snowboard with no bindings by practicing in the lucid dream, and taught himself how to like skateboard in like a handstand in a lucid dream. And like, that's pretty impressive. So it's definitely like, those are very difficult things to do, but also possible things that you can do in waking life that he was able to like learn how to do and then bring it into the waking experience.
Okay. So you're primarily a lucid dreaming coach for athletes.
Yeah, I primarily focus on athletes. Most athletes are aware of the importance of sleep at this point. Athletes are also looking for just like a 1% competitive edge. Anything that will give them just the slight edge, they're open to. And so you look at like in the 90s where mindfulness meditation was not something that was super well known or super mainstream. Phil Jackson, who was the coach of the like one of the best basketball teams of all time, the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, he was teaching his team how to meditate together. And they all bought into it. It took them some time, I think, to accept it. But once they did, they saw the impact that it had on their mental game and their ability to bond as a team. And so that was, they were early adopters of meditation. And the same thing with visualization. Phil Jackson, that coach, was practicing visualization as a player in like the 70s. And now it's, every athlete, I think, would at least know whether they're practicing it or not. They would understand that this is a powerful tool that they can use. And so I see this as like the next extension of that. You have a population of people who are already trying to improve upon their sleep. They're sleeping like 8 hours, or even like LeBron James, who's one of the best basketball players in the world and of all time. He apparently sleeps like at least 10 hours, sometimes 12 hours. And he's even said himself, LeBron James says there's nothing more important than optimal REM sleep. It's the best way to be physically and emotionally back to 100% as possible. And so he's not just talking about sleep. He's talking about REM sleep when dreaming is happening. And I've heard him say also that you have great dreams. I'm so curious. I want to know what LeBron James is dreaming about. Maybe he has people that have taught him how to lucid dream, and that's why he's so good. I don't know. But yeah, people are aware of sleep as a foundation for performance and well-being. And as you get people who are just sleeping more, you're naturally going to have more dreams, and as you're paying attention to the night more.
Yeah, that's so funny. I'm sure that athletes who play a lot of sports definitely dream about it and dream about being on the field. I mean, it only makes sense. And yeah, I love what you said about meditation. I say that all the time. That's the next 10 years of like dream work. It's just now starting, and we're in a perfect position to help guide people.
Yeah, I think when I would talk about lucid dreaming like 15 years ago, it was like kind of rejected as weird and woo-woo. And I still actually carry a little bit of that stigma with me. But more often these days, the reaction I get is one of curiosity and interest. And I think because of some of these studies that have come out, and just it's become more mainstream.
Yeah, it's very reassuring that people are more interested in it now. Students that come to you, are they beginner lucid dreamers, or are they somewhat experienced already?
Yeah, I think most are coming from like the beginner stage. There are some natural lucid dreamers. That's one of the interesting interesting pieces is that, and especially a younger athletes tend to have their primes in at younger ages, which is also ages when lucid dreaming is maybe a little bit more of a natural phenomenon, something that just kind of occurs naturally. So that's another reason that athletes are such an interesting population to work with, because they have that ability a little bit more naturally because of the age that they are. One of the other things that I see is it's really incredible for athletes who are recovering from injuries, because you have a situation where an athlete can't practice. The only thing you can do is work on your mind, really. And maybe, depending on the injury, you can do certain other things, but it's a really great opportunity for athletes to invest in their mind and invest in their sleep, take advantage of an opportunity. I always talk about turning obstacles into opportunities, and it's a perfect chance to utilize whatever time you have while you're injured to look into this as a practice that will then stick with you once you're back and ready to go and can have for the rest of your life, the rest of your career.
Do you believe that we can use lucid dreaming for healing things, like healing physical injuries and things like that?
That's a great question. I tend to believe that. Yeah. I've, heard anecdotal stories from people, and, it's a concept that I think people, when we're talking about like lucid dreaming as being something that's kind of new and people are still accepting that that might be something for people hard to expect, but like the power of the placebo is incredible. And whether it's placebo or whether it's something more than placebo, there's something to it. And I certainly wouldn't advocate anybody, like that's not the only treatment that someone should get for something. But if you have the ability to become lucid and to try to give yourself some healing energy, then absolutely, that certainly can't hurt.
That's true. And I've always thought that like if a placebo works, it still works, regardless if your mind did it. That's even cooler.
Who cares? Yeah, it's just better. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
So if you become lucid and let's say you have like a sprained ankle or something, what are some ideas of what you could do inside the dream?
Yeah, if it were me, I would, probably just try to send like healing energy into my ankle. I've heard other practices of like shouting to the dream, my ankle is healed, my ankle is healed. That's something that someone might do. But for me, I think like physical in the dream space where, maybe I'm using my hands to just like bring like restorative healing energy into the ankle, and then see what happens when I wake up.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because I've experimented with this a little bit, and I like to get creative as well. And like you said earlier, depending on what you have in the dream, like you might end up, who knows, in a jungle, at the beach, at your house. Like you don't really know. And I kind of work with whatever the dream gives me. Like if there's water around, I'll use it as like a healing bath. If there's like a fruit around, I'll like, rub it on my skin or whatever's around in the dream, as long as I think the intention and the energy behind it is really what it boils down to. And there's so many like ways to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Like we were talking about before, the dream might surprise you and give you something that put you in an environment or give you a response that you weren't necessarily expecting. That is also something that you kind of need to adapt to and work with.
So do you have any good tips for like dream control once you're in the dream and you're trying to summon things and, you have a task that you want to practice or whatever? What are some good tips to like get a grip on the dream?
Yeah, for me, I think it's kind of like reminding myself that this is a dream, because it's like you're walking on a tightrope where if you get too excited, you could wake up or you could forget that you're dreaming. And if you get too passive, maybe you'll just wake up. And so kind of like when I become lucid, grounding myself in my body, maybe rubbing my hands and feeling myself on the earth and just trying to not get too excited. And every so often, just periodically saying to myself or even out loud, I'm dreaming, so I don't forget. And I think that can maybe boost my level of lucidity, because obviously lucidity is a spectrum. And the more that we can kind of push ourselves into like the hyper lucid side of the spectrum, the more ability we'll have to do the sorts of, accomplish these sorts of tasks. I've tried like lucidity boost, just like shouting that to the dream, and that's worked on occasion. But yeah, it's interesting. I just, the dream I was mentioning last night, I was kind of like on a high cliff, and I became lucid and I jumped off the cliff to fly, and I did not fly. I fell down to like a lake. And by the time I got to the lake, I was able to kind of stabilize myself a little bit and barefoot water ski on the lake a little bit. But it's interesting how, I know I can fly. I know this is a dream, and yet I'm not flying. So it's always interesting to work with.
Yeah, lucid awareness is so interesting. And like you said, it's a spectrum, just like our waking life spectrum of consciousness. So sometimes it can be hard to define if you're lucid or not because it can change so much in one dream. But I wanted to ask you as well, what are some of your favorite techniques for lucid dreaming?
For me, the most effective techniques that I've consistently used over the course of my lucid dreaming experience with intention, falling asleep with the intention to become lucid and repeating in my mind in the hypnagogic as I'm falling asleep that tonight I become lucid. Tonight I will recognize that I'm dreaming. I don't do a lot of wake back to bed, though when I do, it's effective. So I try to, as I get older, I think I get a little bit more nervous about not being able to fall back asleep in the middle of the night. So I don't intentionally wake myself up. But if I wake up to go to the bathroom, or if I just happen to wake up in the middle of the night, then I'll take a few minutes and reset my intention to become lucid. And that's really the technique that's been my go-to and has been effective. I've experimented with some others, but some of the practices in the dream yoga book, some like visualizations of like throat chakras and things like that have been effective actually. But for whatever reason, I don't really stick with them. I kind of do them for a stretch of time and maybe it stops working a little bit. And then I go back to the intention piece. That's one I've seen had the most staying power in my practice.
Intention is definitely key with anything in life, especially lucid dreaming. And yeah, I always just incorporate my practice into my life as well. Switch it up, try different things, because, different things work for different people for sure.
Yeah, I would also say that that's definitely like my before bed technique, but like reality checks also. I mean, that's like second nature for me at this point. The ones that I do the most are like reading text and looking away and looking back and seeing if it changes. And then like a close second would be like kind of trying to extend my finger out. Because sometimes in places where you don't have text and sometimes they don't work in the dream, which is frustrating, which is also my dreaming mind maybe messing with me. That's always, it can be frustrating. The whole practice itself is an exercise in patience. It's an exercise in persistence because there's no shortage of opportunities to where you wake up and you're like, man, how did I not realize I was dreaming? How did that reality check not work? And you just kind of have to laugh at it, and you can't let it get to you because you got to be in it for the long haul.
Yeah, that's so true. And that happens a lot too. Like the finger stretch is one of my go-to favorite ones. And it's always like my finger gets like all big and rubbery, and it's really interesting. But I always do too as a backup, just as part of my habit, because there are times when I'm like, oh, that's normal, like nothing weird here.
Yeah. One that I've been doing that's also like kind of sports related is I wear the sleep tracker and like fitness tracker that I use is Whoop. It's kind of got like a subtly etched logo in it. And so it does require like a lot of like observation to like do a reality check with that text. So I found that to be effective, and also tends to, because it's kind of like an activity tracker and it maybe also has the opportunity to put me in an environment where I'm like working out or playing sports or something like that.
That's a good one. Yeah, that makes sense to incorporate your reality checks around something like sports related. So you're already kind of thinking that way.
For sure. My wife is 33 weeks pregnant. And so I've been having some dreams about her pregnancy and dreams about baby. And so it's exciting and interesting to think about how that will be reflected in my dream life. I've had a few dreams. I haven't seen the baby itself, but I've seen parts of the baby and dreams related to that experience. So, and also the sleep disruption that's going to be happening once the baby comes. I'm actually kind of excited about it. I think it'll be an interesting experiment in what an irregular cycle is like. And I'm committed to just kind of using it for working with like hypnagogia and, like see what like a 20-minute nap where you're just kind of on edge, like where the baby's going to be crying any minute and just kind of surfing that first stage of sleep. I say that now. We'll see what happens like once the baby's actually here and how much I'm enjoying the experiment in sleep deprivation. But yeah, that's something that I'm excited about. And I have some dream plans actually related to the healing piece and like sending healing energy to the baby and to Pamela, my wife, as she gets ready for a life-changing experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think you have good intentions with it. And yeah, I mean, what better way than to use it as a tool? I'm sure it'll be difficult, but if you have like a fun, little experiment you're doing with it, it'll just make it more enjoyable, I think. And you might have some really cool experiences with it. I've heard stories of my friends having like really interesting dreams when they fell asleep with their baby. And, you're always kind of half awake, half asleep. So those liminal dreams can be really cool. So we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me personally, the like lucid dreaming kind of tends to overshadow like the liminal dreaming a little bit. But I know that there's like great power in liminal dreaming, and so it'll be like a forced time where I can, will need to work with that, or that's the only might be the only tool available to me at that time.
Yeah, and this might be thinking far ahead, but have you thought about like how you're gonna like raise your child to like think about dreams, or record their dreams and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's exciting. I am looking forward to hearing when he starts to dream. How I have it in my mind is it should happen fairly natural. Like me and Pamela, my wife, that we talk about our dreams the first thing when we wake up. So she's also got a pretty rich dream life, and especially now in pregnancy, it's been even more detailed. And so we share our dreams with each other. And if our baby is spending time with us, then I imagine that he'll adapt to that, and we'll all share them together. I have a friend who is also a lucid dream teacher and has a early teenage child, and she says that her kid is like a fantastic lucid dreamer. So I imagine having the skill set from an early age is beneficial, and you can probably become pretty skilled at it.
Yeah, children are such natural dreamers, and especially with like a great dream teacher parent like you are, like I'm sure he's going to be really great. And children have a lot of nightmares sometimes, and that's usually how they learn how to become lucid. And like I was having lucid dreams at like 8 years old, but I didn't have guidance telling me like this is normal, you can do this. I would just wake up and end the dream. Like had I had somebody teaching me that I could do more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's crazy how having a map and having someone to guide you through the space is so valuable, because, we're just kind of figuring it out for ourselves back then.
Yeah, we're going to have to do another episode in like a year or two so you can like update me on how baby life and dreams are going. But earlier you were talking about how you were interested in using dream work for shadow work. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how people can get started with doing that?
Yeah, I can share how I've worked with it myself. And it's come up for me mostly in a lucid dream where, like we were talking about, like, you have this dreaming co-creator that is creating the dream environment and may throw things at you. If you have enough lucid dreams, if you have enough experience in the space, then some of them might get a little bit challenging. One is like remembering that you're in a dream and that you're safe, and that these are just aspects of your own mind. And underneath all of this appearance is that like your mind, your true nature is good and wise and compassionate. And you may have to pass through some of this like murky, repressed, scary, fearful experiences in order to get down to that bottom base layer of our being. And so having kind of that view in mind is important, because you can be fully aware that you're dreaming and see something scary in the dream and just be like, nope, I don't want to deal with that. It requires courage, and it may require attempts. It may require like baby steps and just taking it experience by experience. But if you can build up that courage to, like you said, not wake yourself up, to not run away, and to confront this, whatever aspect it is, because it is an aspect of yourself. Like I said, it's your dreaming mind is you, and it's something that's asking for you to pay attention to it. And if you can not only pay attention to it, but accept it and receive it with love and project that to it, then the healing power is incredible. And the experience that, that you would wake up with, and the sense of wholeness that you would feel upon doing that is super powerful. It's like, actually, have you ever seen Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yes, I love that movie.
There's like one scene that reminds me a lot of a lucid dream where I can't remember the main character's name, but she's like fighting Jamie Lee Curtis's character, and she receives the instruction that she needs to tell her that I love you. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah.
And she's saying it. She's like, she tells her that I love you, but like if nothing's happening, she's not making the jump. It's not until she actually feels it, like, I love you, that she makes the jump. And like, I was like, that is very, very similar, because in a lucid dream where you're doing shadow work, you have to actually mean it. You have to actually feel it, because you could be like, I love you. And that monster might not transform. It might not do anything. It might continue to come at you and continue to have this fearful display. But if you actually like believe it and say it with gusto, then that's kind of when the transformation occurs.
Yeah, that's so true. And this also applies to like the dream control that we were talking about earlier. I read a book by William Bowman, and in that book, he says, wimpy requests get wimpy results. And I just love
Beautiful.
that. It's true. Like the more confident you are and how you really feel it, like you'll get more out of the dream.
Yeah, that's so well said. I'm going to write that down, because I think that is super applicable to like my dream last night. I think it was a wimpy request for my dream ambassador.
Yeah, it happens for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, where can people find you? Like, what do you have going on that you want to share?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Eric Spirko. On TikTok, it's the same. I have some meditations on Insight Timer, and I'm working on a program, like a 30-day audio program for improving your sleeping and dreaming, optimizing your sleep and dreaming. That's going to be launched in January. So you'll be able to sign up for that on my link in my Instagram. And those are the big ones. More to come. I'm going to be doing some more formal courses that will be launching early next year. And I do one-on-one work and doing some workshops, some live ones here in Brooklyn, and some online workshops at the end of February. So yeah, bouncing around, and all that information should be on my LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn, no, not LinkedIn, Instagram. Well, LinkedIn too, actually. I have that on my mind because I'm working on that too.
I'll definitely include all of your links in the description so people can find it. Do you have any like closing remarks to anybody that made it to the end of this episode? Any like words of advice that are on your heart for lucid dreamers out there?
I love that question. Yeah, I would say, like we were talking about, I think there's a lot of ways you can become discouraged in this practice. It's, somebody listening to this for the first time, or learning about lucid dreaming for the first time, might have a lucid dream tonight. It can happen instantly. It could take some time for you to have that first lucid dream, and then it takes some time to stabilize it into a practice. So I think being gentle with yourself and always like keeping it fresh, staying excited, finding something fun to do, having that motivation and intention. Like you gotta have something, we gotta want it, because it is an advanced practice, frankly. And so unless you're the sort of person that just has this naturally occur to you. But yeah, stay the course, get excited, find people that are into it. I think it took me some time to find like a community of people that understand and appreciate lucid dreaming. That's been a huge benefit to me too. So yeah, those are a few things that I'd say. Share what you're experiencing with others, with me.
Yeah, the community makes a big difference for me too. I mean, that's how I got started with all of this. And there's so much within dream work. There's lucid dreaming, dream analysis, shared dreaming. There's just so many different niches within the niche itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I appreciate all that you're doing. I mean, I appreciate you for having me. And yeah, it's exciting. You're bringing a lot of visibility to this. And like we said, I think the trajectory of where these practices are going is kind of, just starting. So I'm excited to be a part of it, and looking forward to continuing to talk to you about it.
Yeah, we're definitely going to do a part 2 later on for sure. I appreciate you, and I appreciate all the listeners too that made it this far into the episode. If you support the podcast, please, please, please leave a review, whether you're on Spotify or YouTube or Apple or Amazon or any of the podcast platforms, or even just follow us on social media. Any type of support helps. So thanks for listening, and sweet dreams.